In case you never heard of what everyone says about this book, I will tell you because it will probably be the very first thing you get from the final revival of Opal and Nev. Daisy Jones and the Six has an oral history, and so does this book. Have you read it? I haven't, but you weren't expecting me to start this review with, oh yeah, so this book is like this other book which I haven't read. But what I have read is The Seven Husbands of Evelyn Hugo, which is very similar in that it follows like a very famous celebrity, and the story is told from a journalist who's closely connected to the celebrity, but in a different way than from what you might expect. So if you like celebrity stories, I fully expect that you will enjoy this one. The reason I stressed about not having read Daisy Jones before is that I've heard several criticisms recently that this book is just not original because it does a very similar thing to that book, which I just don't get the critique because many books follow the same idea and the same plot. Yes, the concept has been done before, but this time it's more complicated because it's 70s America and present day America, and it's not about the individual, it's about a duo, more specifically a Black American woman called Opal who's extremely fierce and doesn't take BS from anyone, and a white British guy called Neville. He's really bland. He's like a grayish sort of wallpaper, the type of wallpaper that you appreciate because like it brings out all the other objects, but that also requires you to take care of it because like if the house is damp, the wallpaper might develop mold. So he's just like not the type of wallpaper that you really want in your life, if you know what I mean. Like you'd be better off choosing something that's like light blue or light green. Like what I'm trying to say is he plays center role in that he introduces Opal and he begins to work with Opal, and without him the story wouldn't be possible. But from there on he becomes secondary to me because whenever he's brought center stage he's just this really like egocentrical and jealous and spoiled type. So if you want a book that has really likable characters, I don't think you'll find that likable character in him. Basically how he and Opal meet is that he is traveling around looking for a duet to bring out his energy, and then he sees Opal, and against all other expectations, even though she can't really sing like perfectly, he chooses her. However, he's not a problem for me because he's unlikable. He's just a problem in the broader sense. Like I have nothing against unlikable characters, but where's the spice in the development? Like look at this, see, this wallpaper is decorated with foxes, it brightens up the room. If he's being a part of the story, you should develop him, even if he's basically like nothing and the majority of the space is taken up by Opal. I felt like we were just really undergiven with the lack of character development there because it would have made the book so much more starker. Like we get a spoonful of mommy issues and of trauma, but his whole personality is that he writes songs well and he's like a mopey teenager who gets jealous a lot. Like I don't even want to say teenager because he's not a teenager anymore, but he just acts that way. The fictional author of the book several times comments on how she views Opal as this revolutionary and empowering Black feminist, and her lyrics were important back then and her lyrics are still important now, but for me that's not the things that make her so special, it's her actions. Before I knew this was fictional, I was already turning the internet upside down looking for Opal, looking for more information about this woman who went from a poor sisterhood act to being a legend, to being involved in a riot that ended up with a man dead. And let's talk about this dead man for a second because he is sadly never the focus on the story. We don't get his POV, but we do get his presence. And this dead man, his name is Jimmy, is the dad of the reporter who's writing the story. The reason that Opal knows the reporter is because she was involved with an affair with her dad. Jimmy had a child on the way, and Opal knew this, and yet she still continued the affair because she liked his talent, she felt understood by him as the only other Black man in the band. And like even with a character such as Opal, so clearly the star of the show, such a good and inspirational character who knows the delicate and tender balance between a career, her own personal self, she still has very human and very problematic flaws. The book is extremely nuanced in that way. It's not so much the lyrics as the actions, like I said before, the very real and not so perfect actions. The author, the actual author, Donnie Walton, I think makes very clear that Opal caused a lot of pain to the people around her. She had that affair with a married man. She couldn't be clear that nothing is perfect and that everything has its difficulties. The 70s had its good and the bad, and today has its good and the bad. Everything feels incredibly incredibly real and authentic. I can feel it now, like the riots and the concert and everything. You will feel every little wound and every little hurt. But let's talk about this riot because I think this would be a great book club pick for some very necessary conversations and also fascinating to see people's opinions. The record deal that houses Opal and Nev signs on a biker band. I don't know how to call it. Those sort of like, oh, America, like Confederate flags, like those type of people, they wave that Confederate flag around. And of course, Opal and Jimmy, the two black people in the band, are offended and they don't want it there. And so the manager talks to the band and the band assures them like, yeah, whatever, it's all sorted. And then they invite a group of their biker friends who are ill-mannered, who literally harass the other performers because they're doing a group event. So Opal and Nev are there, some other bands are there, and they literally like come up, they touch the girls, they ruin their performance, and Opal can't handle it anymore because of this as well. So when one of the boy band members drops the Confederate flag, she takes it and she rips it and she ties it around herself under her skirt. And then there comes a moment in her performance where everyone's being so disruptive, and so she just like lifts the skirt up and she demonstrates and she rips the Confederate flag in half. The leader of the band, the flag that he had, the one that Opal ripped, was the one that his dad gave to him, and so they get into a fight, and what happens is they assault Opal, they assault Nev, they assault everyone in the club because there's a lot of them, and they kill Jimmy. It feels incredibly wrong to call what happened here a messy situation. It's more of a tragedy because a literal like expecting soon to be father died in the tragedy, and it really shows the injustice that Opal faced the backlash, but Nev never did. So only she had to handle the situation. He wasn't involved. Everyone just brushed it off, even though he was right there with her fighting. It also shows the difficulty in like, should Opal have been more careful about what she's doing? And there are many such things that I don't want to call like messy situation, but rather conflict-based situations throughout the book. There's a lot here, and the book's progression of the plot is far from being steady. It's more like up and down. However, that being said, even with all the ups and downs, there's a moment halfway through when the book just slumps, and I get that it's supposed to reflect the actual slump in the characters' lives, but I had to force myself to continue this book because it dragged so much. And look, I get it, pace is a very personal thing, but nonetheless, I feel like I need to comment on this to help people prepare. The pace I could handle being bad, even though that did ruin my overall very positive impression of the book because it was just so unique. What I couldn't handle was the style becoming redundant, becoming more normal and less of that special element that it had at the beginning. The book maintains a very realistic feel, as I already said, throughout. That's not the problem. The issue was more that at the beginning, yes, there were different people interjecting, but it all felt very cohesive and organic, and it had its tender moments. Sure, maybe it was the difference in what was narrated. At the beginning, it was more family scenes, and then later it became more individual. But I just felt like things started to become more elusive. Like nobody was actually answering the question anymore. Nobody was advancing the plot. And really, random people were interjecting. Like, did we really need to hear a random woman who was preparing food for the reporter, her take on Opal? Like, it was, don't get me wrong, it was interesting to hear her take, especially because she was from a different background than most of the people that were interviewed. So she wasn't like a producer, she was just a normal person, and a normal working person at that. Her perspective was very fascinating and very necessary. It added to the book. My issue here was that the author added this right at the end, and she literally didn't resolve the Nev situation. We get thrown bombshell after bombshell, and then it just gets like left alone. So instead of going back and talking about Nev, or at least having some sort of closure, we get this like random woman. Seriously, we left that Nev issue unresolved, and it drove me crazy because there was just this big huge lead up to the end. It's almost like those YouTube videos, they're like, oh, we'll tell you the secret of the universe at the end, and then you get to the end and they're like, this video is sponsored, or something like this. It was just really underwhelming. The book started out so explosive and just fell so flat. It was almost like the author was taking her time, really taking her time in the middle, and then suddenly realized that the book needs to end somewhere, and that, like, I guess it's probably expensive to manufacture books, so it just like ended right as it was. So if you enjoy celebrity vibes and you enjoy relevancy issues and you would want to discuss this as a book club pick, by all means go ahead. However, I do think that it ultimately made it disappointing the way that it carried on the story towards the end. All I'm saying is you will need patience, and a lot of patience, and after that explosive beginning, it's very hard to find that patience. So 3.75 stars. Thank you so much to everyone for watching this video. I have some women's prize for fiction reviews posted on my Instagram page as well. I will be posting actually one more this week, and I will see you later this week then. So thank you for watching, and bye.